security came up, and it also became an issue of IoTs taking over human and job security and everything. In short, how would one be able to convince them? Because after that became an issue, it was stopped.
So if I understand the question, it is about job security. Um, I would say that uh, it's true. There will be no more meter readers going from house to house with this technology. But this technology would highlight uh, a lot more discrepancies in the system. There would be a lot more maintenance. There would be more services coming because of this. I don't think, I can't say in the short term, but I don't think in the long term there would be job losses because of this. In fact, it would uh, be creating more jobs. It would be creating more high paying jobs. So I don't think that is the case.
Thank you. My name is Wandosan. Thank you for the nice presentation, and I'm proud of this. My question is, this smart meter, it looks pretty much IoT thing. So to my understanding, a smart meter is coming to my house, and there was issue questions this morning that IoT vulnerabilities such as hardware trusts and securities. What are your arguments towards these vulnerabilities coming from your product? Thank you.
Is this about security?
And the hardware trust, how do we trust your hardware? Because this morning, one of the IoT vulnerability was, do we trust the hardware? If I have this smartwatch, I have to trust it, right? So I have your product here, which is smart. How do we trust? What are the standards? Which standards did you follow to make this, to make your product trustworthy?
Okay, so since this is about mainly IoT security, I should have said a little bit more about security. So the smart meters are really just like anything else, processing devices, and there are mainly two levels of security regarding security. There is what they call high level security, which is based on NIST standard. Uh, um, well, this is certificate based authentication. When the meters are manufactured and they are being tested, when the firmware is loaded, uh, uh, digital certificates would be loaded on the meter. And that would be kept by the manufacturer, and that would be issued to the utility. And basically, the communication between the backend and the meters is based on that uh, certificate. There is uh, there is encryption for data integrity from the meter to the backend, and all the the standard uh, security procedures are applied. In addition, uh, if you see the network between the meter to the concentrator, to the transformer, that is really uh, a private network, right? There is no other public data going over that. So that is even physically secure. From the transformer to the backend, the utility can select either a VPN or its own uh, a private network. So there are uh, the meter software, there are several standards for the meter. There is what they call type test. One is just the physical condition, right? Operating temperature, even altitude, voltage, and all that. And the other is accuracy. So both these has to be certified. Not only us, every meter manufacturer has to certify this. That is, they have to certify that it works as per some IEC standard for physical and operational requirements. And the other thing is for accuracy, they also do type tests. So we have tested these meters for these conditions. The software DLMS standard, that's the communication between the meters and the backend, that is also certified by DLMS Society, which is an international standard.
Okay, I see many more questions. There are a few presentations which are coming next. So could I kindly ask that we hold our presentations and Grum will be with us. You're staying over for lunch, yeah? You're welcome. You're invited. Yes, and Grum will be around for more questions because we have a few more presentations to come. So kindly hold your question, then we'll come to that. So next, I think another round of applause for Grum for his presentation. So next, I'll invite Bakary to give a presentation on a project that was implemented by the chapter in Gambia.
Okay, good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much, Kevin, for the facilitation. Like he said, my name is Bakary Njie. I'm from Gambia Chapter. I am coming to present on one of the projects that my chapter is involved with a team of developers from the University of the Gambia and supported by one of their professors. We collaborated with one of the clinic, a private clinic in the Gambia, to implement the project. Now, the motivation for the project basically was that we realized from the initial point that data collection is a huge challenge in our country, especially in the area of health sector. So for that being the case, what can we do? Then the developers were able to come up with this idea of exploring how they can collect this data while at the same time save time and energy of the staff that work at the health center. So we have the objective of the project as to automate the patient data collection activities, to ease electronic data transmission from storage, and also easy retrieval. The whole project started from 1st September to 16 October. And the actual costs involved in developing the project, at the same time support the team in whatever logistics that they require, amounted to $2,000. And International Society funded the project through the Chapter-Ton project. So basically the devices that were used include MySignals, Pregnancy Monitoring Development Kit, MySignals HW, they use Arduino, blood pressure, body scale BLE, SPO2 pulse, oxygen in blood sensor, and temperature sensor. You can see by the time they were able to develop this project, at the center, that's the clinic, when the project has been tested, all this equipment we were able to use the equipment in the process to basically collect the biodata of the patients, including their blood pressure, body weight, oxygen level, and the temperature. So the demonstration, as you can see from the picture that is right below there, has been conducted at the clinic itself. Then we're able to reach out to students at the University of the Gambia, where the project was, the idea was shared among them to have an experience and get aware of it, kind of to inspire them to also start thinking of getting involved in Internet of Things projects. Next slide, please. So what solutions does this provide for the clinic? At least we are able to get real data collection, also store the data and retrieve it. And by doing that, we're able to save time for them. Because initially, the staff at the clinic were going around collecting data routinely on a manual. And they had a difficulty of transforming this data into a digital data and store it. So time has been saved, at the same time, the energy. So the doctors, the nurses, now have more time to focus on other health functions that they conduct at the clinic. So you can see the images shows that of the database of the biodata of the patients, as you can see on the slide. What lessons have we learned from this? Obviously, we learned lessons, so many lessons. We realized that there is a huge potential that IoT, especially in the area of health, can do more in the Gambia. And that we need to see a way to replicate such an idea, not only in the private sector, but also in the public sector, where the masses of the population normally go for clinical services. And you could imagine if you need a data about your, maybe somebody who has passed away, or a child, or your medical record. Imagine you have piles of papers and books, and the team that works in that office is supposed to go and then go through all those files before they can get you. Time really gets wasted along the way. So if IoT e-health is implemented in the Gambian health delivery system, it will really help to save time and energy, and efficiency also will be addressed. So you can see these are some of the things that we learned. But then upon coming here, especially with the presentation that I just heard from my, is it professor from dVentus, it makes me think even further that we need to do more. Because when you look at the kind of devices that were used in our own project, they're bought from vendors outside of Africa and Gambia. So the question is, the data that are collected, we claim, yes, fine, we do have some storage in our database, but the vendors also, they have access to it. So where's the security of that data? So I have learned that here personally, and I believe when we go home, we'll look into that, thinking of how to create our own hardware, our own devices, our own system that will serve our own situations back in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bakary, for that very interesting presentation. I think I've learned a lot as well from that. So before we move on to the next presenter, are there any questions for Bakary? So I see one. We'll take 3 questions. See, gentlemen. Anyone else with a question for Bakary? Okay.
Thank you very much. Again, Dr. Robert Muduri from Strathmore Law School. Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to know, as earlier we were talking about smart regulation, does Gambia have a privacy law or a data protection law? I know you have an Information and Communications Act. Did you consult that while you were developing the system, so to see how to protect the data that you're collecting?
Thank you very much for that question. Obviously, we don't have any framework as of now in the Gambia, and that is something that we're also going to look at. So it's an urgent matter, and that we have to start developing something. But nonetheless, we'll try to address that of the data protection issue with our government.
Okay, I want to jump on it now because my brother from the Gambia said we don't have data protection law. And it's very, very surprising because—
Please introduce yourself.
Is Dr. Rafael Kofi from ECOWAS. Because since 2010, ECOWAS has a regulation on data protection. And I don't understand, after 9 years, the Gambia have not implemented this regulation. So this is very critical. It's not enough to come here, to meet, to talk, to make a proposal, and go back and sit down. Someone is saying that, what will the next? The next is what? The next, when we take a decision here, we go back and we implement it. It's not just to come here, meet, talk, and go back and doing nothing. I'm very, very surprised that the Gambia have not done anything on data protection. If you take ECOWAS data protection regulation, everything is there. So I think we need to raise this kind of things publicly, so we understand that we don't travel, make 4,000 kilometers and come back to discuss and doing nothing after. Thank you.
I'll jump in at this point to defend Gambia.
Please introduce
the gentleman might not be aware, but it was due last week, which was postponed. I'm part of a mission led by the Council of Europe going into Gambia to assist the government to document their data protection law. So there's a lot of discussion going on. We are actually looking at the contents of the act as we speak. And next week, some of us will be going into Gambia to assist the government to put it in writing. So it's almost there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Saj. Any more questions for Bakary before we move? Okay, so Saj.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. I'm Saj Parfait from the Republic of Congo. Thank you, Bakary, for the work you've done. It is indeed extraordinary to see what you've succeeded to do. I really did not understand how you do data collection. Now, the devices you create, do people stay with them in their houses and then communicate the data to medical practitioners? You didn't explain the mechanism that you use for data transfer. There is a collection of data and transfer of data. Second, my next question is this. Did you think of do data transcription during its collection, or if not, how do you do it afterwards? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that wonderful question. The devices that you can see here were the ones that were used. And you can see from the picture, when they are collecting the blood samples, they use these devices, okay? When they're testing the pregnant woman to know the conditions, these are the devices that they used. And then these devices, automatically, they're connected to the database with the support of the internet. And also the Arduino with that connects all these devices together to export the data to the database. So that's how they were able to do the implementation of this project. Yeah, so,
But how do you secure the connection between the database and your devices?
The security of the device, the database, like the database at the back end, and it's accessible to the technical people who develop this project. So no other person has the access to the database. And I know I was asking them this question, how about somebody who can have access? You know, so they said they have implemented right authentication mechanisms in place that strengthen the security level. But now that, like I said, I learned that the vendors still have access to this data. That I cannot guarantee you that, but then that's something that we can look into in the future, have our own device, and then secure it, deploy it on our own server or data center. So, thank you.
Okay, I have to allow the ladies to speak, so please.
Thank you. It's more a contribution than a question, and especially about...
Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, Esther from Cameroon chapter, Esther Ngom. I have a legal background, so this will explain my contribution. It's about you looking, when you're back in your country, on how you can handle the problem of the vendors having access to the device and having maybe developing local solution. So you have to look, when you work on it, just look on the possibility to have access to millions of technology that are already in the public domain. That's intellectual property rights are no longer in force, so you have access to millions of technology in different area of the science. So you may find some of the devices that are free of use, because when you apply for a patent, one of the conditions is to have a description of the patent, of the invention, in a way that a technical person from that specific area can reproduce it just with the patent application. So you may find almost all of this device on the public domain, and from that you can contextualize and have your local solution. This was my input.
Thank you, Esther. The lady at the back.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So I'm Patricia from Ghana, Data Protection Commission. Whilst we are still on the subject of data protection, Gambia is not a standalone situation where because of the lack of data protection laws across the continent. And I side with ECOWAS with their stressing the need for passing, enacting data protection laws and implementing the requirements, because we're going to get a repeat of this, where major databases that process high volumes of personal data with a high velocity of sharing hasn't done the required risk assessment around the projects. That we have it dotted up, not dotted, it's actually spread across Africa. And in every country, you have major projects. Our political decision makers are putting a lot of projects out, a lot of digitization happening without due diligence of the technology that we are bringing into the system and the impact on the individual at the end of the day, where we put in all our data, we digitize it, we give it to external partners who then have access to the data to do whatever they want with. We don't even put in retention policies that tells them when they stop using the data and what to do with it, no decommissioning plans, no disposal plans. And so that we give them indefinite access to our data and they use it anyhow. I'm very passionate about this subject, and it doesn't end with just the acquisition of technology. We have NGOs coming into our fields, doing projects and taking a whole lot of child data, women's data, medical data, and taking it away because we are not careful to implement the due diligence that is required. So this is why we are having the African Network Conference in June in Ghana. I'm inviting all the key speakers on this subject and the stakeholders across Africa, including the ECOWAS and the AU and other countries that haven't even passed the law, to be represented there to discuss the issues that are pertinent to Africa. Some problems are specific to our continent. Like, how do we manage the consent of individuals? For example, in a project like this, we put the meters in everybody's house. Do they have the say? And how does it impact them at the end of the day? The supplier of the technology takes his money, takes his profit, and is gone. And we have to deal with the impact on our daily lives. So as we are here discussing IoT, it is very closely aligned with the collection of data and how it impacts each of us at the end of the day. We are very happy to apply new technology all across our lives, but it looks like we're not looking at the safeguarding of the data that goes into it. I don't want to take up too much time, but it's the reason why I took upon myself to host this conference in Ghana, to bring all the key stakeholders together to really discuss how we are going to manage this for this continent. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I think you've mentioned very important things. And tomorrow we're actually going to focus a lot more on privacy and digital identity. I believe the gentleman at the back has a question as well. Yes.
Bonjour. Donc,
Good morning. I'm Buleman. I come from the Moroccan chapter. My question is addressed to the two presenters because it concerns the storage of the information that you collect for your applications. And I would like to know whether you don't have some temptation, not systematic anyway, but it can be tempting to get that information and to want to sell the information. I give you an example. For example, a mobile constructor that gets that has information or devices in the car, and then gets information or some benefit by selling that information that is collected with devices in the car. Thanks.
So the data belongs to the utility. It is not. It's not owned by dVentus as such. In some cases, we may be running the system on behalf of the utilities, but the utilities still own the data. So as far as we are concerned, we can't sell it even if we wanted to. But one thing that could be said is that the data could be anonymized. That's basically, you could strip out you could strip out the data that can identify people, and the rest is just data patterns. For example, if you are looking at consumption patterns in this city, that could be presented to a third party without revealing the identity of the users. But at any rate, for us, the data would be owned by the utility, and they this question really belongs to them, and I hope they don't sell the raw data. We had a pilot in a part of the city here, about 300 meters. And when we're looking at the data, it's quite telling what you could learn. You could tell what people are doing in their homes. You could tell whether they are, doing light cooking or heavy cooking, or if somebody is visiting the house and all that. So this is privacy. And I hope the utilities would know that, and they wouldn't sell it to, a third party. And there are a lot of interested parties in this. So.
Okay, thank you for that intervention, Grum. It's an important topic of, who owns the data and how is it going to be used or processed. There's usually a saying that says, if you're on the internet, there's nothing for free. If you're being provided something for free, you're the product being sold. So it's, it's something to think about. And tomorrow, and also I think a bit of this afternoon, also tomorrow we'll focus a lot about privacy, and we'll discuss all these aspects that are coming up. But these are very good interventions. So I think I'd like to introduce the presenter from Tanzania. And then after that, we'll have one more presenter from Cameroon, Esther, she'll present. So let's hear from Tanzania. I think, Peter, you're welcome to the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Peter from Tanzania, Madagascar Chapter. So I would like to thank God that we are officially registered, and it was very, very difficult to be registered by the government of Tanzania. We had a series of meetings with the Tanzania communication and regulators, as well as Tanzania security, intelligence security, until we are now officially registered. So previously we couldn't have that opportunity to implement any kind of project, but we started with creating awareness. So in Tanzania, IoT is something new, even though that's some of the companies or corporations they are implementing any other way in healthy or agriculture or any other project that they are undergoing. But the IoT, we have started with to give education, creating awareness to the people of Tanzania, starting with the young people in schools and universities. So in last October, during the Tanzania IoT week, awareness week, we had public discussion on IoT and security, where we invited expertise and government officials and corporations to discuss concerning the IoT security in Tanzania. Also, we had the students as a competition on Internet of Things, where we invited 15 schools from Dar es Salaam. So during that competition, we wanted to know and understand that how many Tanzanians, especially students, they understand the concept of Internet of Things and the privacy of and the protection and meaning of their data. So the winners were awarded because it was a stimulating discussion and competition for the young people. The first prize was given to the student was USD 100, and the second prize was USD 50, and the third prize was USD 35. So the lesson learned, we came to learn that in Tanzania, 30% of Tanzanians, even if they are using internet, 30% is the only one which they are aware. No, it's connected with the internet. But 70% of the population of Tanzania, it's still in the darkness, that there is no accessibility of internet. So there's still a large number of people, they don't know about their data, the protection of data. Even if you introduce, you say, you give them a tool to protect their data, they can't. You tell even change their password, they don't understand. It seems that they are not aware of their privacy. Also, there's high demand of capacity building in Tanzania, and ongoing right now, there are different NGOs that are cooperating with us to give us a chance to explain the IoT in Tanzania. Also, women and girls are the most users because they are participating a lot in economic or decent works. And the thing is, mobile money is used in Tanzania right now. And they are the most ones who are being affected by this SMS phishing. So they are affected, and there are many cases that are ongoing concerning the awareness of the IoT and the privacy of data. So also we learned that we need more resources so that we can create more awareness even to the rural areas. Basically, we started with Dar es Salaam, but Dar es Salaam with a population of 6 million people, it's not enough. We need human resource, we need financial resource, we need devices so that we can go on with this activity. So the current project is IoT Smart Idea Tanzania, and the competition project, through this project, the youth participating in creating IoT and artificial intelligence based on smart solutions for challenges in agriculture. This we are doing with the Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology, or DIT. They are the ones who are partnering with the ISO chapter of Tanzania. So we are now focusing on the agriculture, health, energy, water, and education. So the project, it's a competition. So those who are going to win, they'll get their prize. But we don't want to leave anyone behind, because we want to include even those ones who they have smart ideas that we can move on. Next. So the cost of the project, or projected budget, is 65,000 USD. And the aim of this competition is to engage the public to create chapter visibility and help to create an innovative IoT-based devices to solve challenges in 5 sectors that mentioned earlier. So thank you. And I will share on Twitter the pictures that the pictures of the previous competition of the students, how Tanzania engaged, and we are happy that we are officially registered, so there is a smooth way we can implement more projects ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing with us the work you're doing on promoting IoT. That's very interesting. I look forward to hearing more about the progress of the competition. Do we have any questions for Peter? Okay, we have 2 questions. So the lady, and then the 2 gentlemen here. Okay.
My name is Linda Michelle. I'm with the Ford Foundation, and I lead the program, Civic Engagement and Government Program for the Office of East Africa. My question, one question for the presenter, but a number of questions, and I'm panicking as I speak now. 3 questions for the rest of us regarding some of the presentations that were made during the day. One of the reasons why I'm here today is because, sorry, excuse me. It's not because I'm afraid, it's because I'm asthmatic and there's a carpet on the floor. It's because the foundation has realized that our civic engagement and government work cannot proceed without an intersection with technology. So leading this program, I've been coerced into coming to this meeting. This is my very first meeting, ICT meeting, to make that connection. And my question for Tanzania is, our civic engagement and government work focuses on pushing the introduction of issues of IT, IoT and all that is definitely going to cause trouble. So working at the intersection of governance and human rights, how do you see your work panning out? I'm just trying to make that connection between what we are doing today on IoTs and the work that I'm doing on civic engagement and government. So that's my first question. The second question is to all of us with regard to this issue of innovation. I'm just wondering, practically, has any effort been made to intervene at the point of development of the technologies in terms of rules, in terms of norms, in terms of technical standards? Because it seems like we are sort of like, reacting or, engaging after these issues, like after technology has already been developed. So what are we doing about this? Is it possible? Is it practical for something like that to be done? Then secondly, is the issue of the organizations that I'm working with, which are civic governments organizations or civic organizations essentially. And the challenge for me is that most of the organizations that we have here today are sort of like tech related. So, and when we look at most of them, they are actually small organizations with probably little resources and a small or lacks a broad-based constituency in terms of influence. And the organizations that I work with are large organizations, sort of like legacy human rights organizations, with quite a number of, quite a bit of resources and with a large constituency for impact. So I'm wondering, in terms of influencing norms, rules, technical standards and all that, what are we doing to bring this, like 2 sets of organizations that are working on different issues together? Is it something that has been tried or it hasn't been tried before? Then the last thing is to the regional accountability mechanisms that we have here. Issues of regulation involves multinational companies, multilateral governments, and standard bodies. But harm and opportunity happens at the local level. So what is the extent to which we are trying to connect this, ensuring that we have local level mobilization that would actually make global South governments take a stand on the issues, the regulations and all these issues around IoT. So a couple of questions. I'm sorry, I'm still reacting to the carpet. Yeah.
Maybe you can answer on Tanzania then.
Thank you, Madam. On the side of Tanzania, concerning the IoT, digital, and other things concerning internet, on the side of implementation, it's all about partnership right now we are doing. We cannot do on basing on at individual level or single organization. The government right now, because it wants transparent to any project, and it is monitoring. Right now it's very tight. So partnership with the government, partnership with the different organizations on basing to the project that is undergoing any kind of project. It can be fintech, it can be whatever that is on IoT or digital. as I mentioned earlier, the DIT, Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology, is one of the partner. So that's how we work. Yes. Did I answer your question?
I think I'll follow up later on.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just make a short contribution, and then Grum also has something to say on this. So you raised a very important issue on the rules and norms of engagements and what the role of the tech is and what the roles of the non-tech bodies are. So one of the reasons we as internet society we're trying to convene all the stakeholders is that we believe there's a role for everyone to play. In terms of what like the policy formation agencies can do, one straightforward task would be setting the rules of engagement, so to speak. The devices that come into the country, which are IoT, what features do they have? Do they have security features? Do they have password mechanisms? Do they have update mechanisms? And at the policy level, there's a work there to be done so that governments can say, any device coming into the country or being developed into the country must conform to certain standards or rules and regulations. In the afternoon, we're going to hear about a framework that could be adopted, which is called an OTA framework, which sets to define what these IoT devices should be able to do, should have, and some of the features they should include, because consumers will buy whatever is on the market. And if what is coming into the market is not controlled, it means you could end up with a lot of vulnerable devices. And then lastly, I'll just add that there's a role for everyone. There's a role for the tech organizations, especially in terms of standards developments. By standard, it means, for example, if I buy, let's say, an IoT device that's been developed in Gambia, can I bring it to Kenya or can I bring it here to Ethiopia and will it work? So the tech people need to conform to some form of standard so that the devices we use are interoperable. So it doesn't matter what type of IoT device they use, as long as they conform to those standards, they work together. So understanding the role of the tech, understanding the role of the non-tech, is some of the issues that we're trying to bring out, trying to start the conversation, because as we've seen, the developments are happening. Actually, we're going to hear we're going to see a couple of interesting videos from Cameroon on IoT in the transport sector, and they're already using it. And it goes back to some of the questions you've asked. What are the rules? What's the security? What is the intersection between the technical solution and the policy around it? So I think Grum also you had something to say.
In terms of innovating in Africa, the challenges, one is really finding qualified people who are at the front end of technology, and so that is one thing. The other thing is when you are dealing with local authorities. I don't know much about the rest of Africa, but here in our country, there isn't that much awareness within the government how fast the market is moving, how fast technology is moving, what you have to do to get things done. All these are they will put roadblocks to competition. It really requires, my experience with working with these devices, it really requires the patience of an angel to make things happen here. And it is also an advantage because it keeps away competition. I have seen many European companies or US companies who want to be in the same market, but they can't deal with this extended weight and bureaucracy cutting through the red tape. So it could work both ways, but it is also expensive. And then as far as standards are concerned, really standards are set by default. Whoever is capturing the market, that is a standard, right? And so we have Africans have little input in that standard. Basically, the phones are made for the US or Europe. The meters are made there, and we just buy them, right? And we don't have that much input in these things. But it is a huge market. It is segmented, but it is a huge market.
So I hope we've contributed a bit to the answer. I know it's not the full answer, but I hope it set a bit of answer to some of the questions you have. But before I think we leave for the event, we'll have opportunity to discuss more. I think one more question, and then we'll go to the last presentation. So go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Mrenz Daniel from East African Community. Basically, mine, it's not a question as such, as a contribution to my brother from URT. I think the best way, if we really be realistic as the approach URT is taking, would even help some of our partner states or our countries. The reason being that awareness is the most important thing that we really need to focus on before even we go deeper to start discussing standards, implementation, and what. You find that the decision taken most of the time is taken by politicians, of which when the minister is nominated, he might be not even a tech related. And you find that now, once you don't orient our ministries as the way forward, or our politicians, we will always delay behind. Good example is we should all look behind how many countries in all 54 countries of Africa that their Ministry of ICT is a standalone and is led by a tech person. So that's one of the most intake that I have taken that would be the best way that as we talk about the internet society and other players in this field, let's engage by, first of all, awareness. And on the top of that, again, before we take a measure of the standards, as my brother from here, Ethiopia, mentioned, it's again, look, how do we collaborate across? Today, in our REC, in our East African Community region, we have implemented the cargo tracking, and it's perfectly working because the first step was based on to the awareness. Second is now, if the countries have buy-in, how now can we have the cross-border data sharing, data monitoring, and the data privacy? So the take on this as it drives to our best understanding. Again, working along onto defining the standards or defining the way forward won't help us. It is first, let's create awareness, go forward by now, see where do we want to deal with. Like now we have what we call East African one common area network and one common area for education. So and we have also cross-border health matters we have already adopted and standard. So I find that as we go back again, as they do sensitization, now another additional way, you have sensitized internally, but also sensitize them. What do we trade across? What information do you either share with the SADC you are in or ESC you are in? So that as we come now to define the standards of where we are going and what IoT tools are you going to use in the different sectors, then we now better know that we are looking on both national and the regional, because now we are looking for the future, even the continental way. So that is the one where I thank the URT for taking this step of sensitizing and meeting the politicians to have an ownership of where we are going. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, one last intervention, then Esther, you can prepare for your presentation. Please
merci. Juste, je vais continuer sur la partie.
Thank you. I want to continue on the sensitization. I'm from Tunisia, Shabi. From the examples that were given, I commend the quality of the presentation. I think that the challenge for Africa in terms of IoT is rather a vision, a global strategy, a general strategy. The digital meters with a strategy. So we started right from the conception of the design of the product and then the protocols towards the setting up of what had been started, and then all these technologies. The idea, the observation is to go towards a general strategy. It's a technology. It's not a phenomenon of modernization of internet. It's more than that. Even the example, there are direct effects which are on ecology models themselves of economies of businesses. And we also have businesses, a phenomenon for processing of data security. So you see that it's an example of, on the issues to discuss the general approach and see if we are looking for a collaboration, an interesting collaboration for players in Africa. And there, I also commend the internet society for having thought about this collaborative approach which is general conceptions for internet on things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now at the last presentation. So Esther from Cameroon will make a short presentation, and then we have two videos, one in French, one in English, on the same project. But Esther, you can introduce.
This time I will go in French. Bonjour à tous, je suis Maître Esther.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Esther from Cameroonian chapter of Internet Society. In terms of IoT projects, we've given a lot of, I've worked with a lot of aspects on it. The first project was that of UNET, IoT for visually impaired people, to enable them to have information on obstacles on the road, on the path, the distance. If, for instance, they are near a building, that is actually being developed. We're looking for finance. We are using IoT technology. The second project is a young engineer, electrical engineer, who developed a clever room, what we call clever room, and for using IoT technology to reduce electricity consumption by enabling the person who has the material to the gadget to use remote control to shut it, and also telephone applications, and also a small gadget that Clever Room gives them. So Clever they are at about $8,000 because they get materials from outside. It is a problem which is similar to all projects that have been identified. That is IoT, no materials, but from outside, some from China. The second problem that they have is the quality, the internet quality. It is very unstable in Cameroon. A lot of shutdowns in 2017, and it affected a lot of IoT projects. There was a problem with the Traveler. It's a software. It's a project for the management of trading, traffic in Africa, to enable them for tracking their vehicles. If there is a breakdown, for instance, they can contact emergency services. They can provide information on the location, and it also helped in reducing accidents, for reducing the mortality rate in Cameroon. They are in the southwestern Anglophone side, and it is that area which has been affected, which was mostly affected by internet shutdown. Because of that, they did an innovation so that their software could be used when there was a problem with the internet. And so this, the use of the technology on the device. And another project which is being tested is CardioPad. That is an application for health. They have gadgets on iPad format, which helps in carrying out medical examinations in distant areas. First of all, they were buying some machine. Now, the person who developed it opened a factory in Cameroon, and now the materials that they put together directly. That helps. I think it's a solution to avoid this issue of importing materials and also getting information outside, because the manufacturer has all the materials. So what comes out from one of these projects is internet access and energy access, power access. We've tried to solve that by using making the technology accessible to, but more are more dependent on electricity stability. And the other issue that we've found as an innovation, that's problems which are on daily basis, met on daily basis on the field. We have the top down, and then the problems that they have on the field, and they are trying to find solutions to these problems. I'm referring to what was said this morning, to go to the local people who solve local problems with a local solution. These things can be displayed on a video. Thank you.
Aussi parler d'un voyage, mais au Cameroun cette fois-ci en tout cas. Selon les statistiques, les accidents de la route font plus de victimes en Afrique que le paludisme. Cela peut être aussi attribué à un certain nombre de facteurs, notamment l'abus de l'alcool, le non-respect de règles de la circulation et bien d'autres. Quelles sont les mesures prises au Cameroun pour faire face à cette situation? 2 Camerounais ont trouvé une solution qui en tout cas pourrait réduire le nombre d'accidents, une application dénommée Traveler et qui est désormais reconnue comme une innovation dans la sécurité routière. Un reportage signé Gap.
Lorsque Ashiri Arnold Njie et Kafak Terence Kevin ont terminé leurs études et commencé leur carrière en tant qu'entrepreneur social, ils ne savaient pas qu'ils allaient gagner le prix de l'entrepreneuriat africain en 2016, puis le prix Orange de l'entrepreneur social en 2017. Leur passion était de créer une solution mobile qui résoudrait un problème auquel le continent fait face. L'Afrique a le taux de mortalité par habitant le plus élevé au monde. Le continent n'abrite que 2% des véhicules du monde, mais 16% des accidents de la route. C'est ce problème qui a inspiré Arnold et Kevin à créer une application mobile appelée Traveler.
Cette application est très simple. Tout ce que vous avez à faire est de télécharger l'application depuis Google Play Store. Nous savons où vous êtes et s'il y a un problème avec votre voiture, l'application le détectera automatiquement. Ce n'est pas le conducteur qui nous signale en cas d'incident, c'est l'application qui le signale via l'utilisation d'une technologie de fusion de données capteurs qui nous permet également d'éliminer les accidents avant qu'ils ne surviennent.
Le secteur des transports en Afrique est essentiel pour réduire la pauvreté et stimuler la prospérité. Les transports facilitent l'accès à l'emploi, à l'éducation et aux soins de santé. Ils relient les biens et les services au marché et constituent un moteur essentiel de la croissance dans les pays africains où 90% des personnes et des biens sont déplacés par la route. Grâce aux innovations technologiques, les pays africains peuvent avancer le processus de sécurité routière en se basant sur l'expérience et les leçons tirées des pays plus développés.
Au début, c'était juste un logiciel de prévention d'accidents, mais maintenant, ils font plus que cela. En donnant les premiers secours, les familles sont notifiées. Vous pouvez voir la vitesse d'un conducteur sur votre téléphone cellulaire.
La situation en Afrique est grave. Les accidents de la route sont la principale cause des décès chez les jeunes de 15 à 29 ans dans le monde. Il n'est pas étonnant que Traveler ait reçu un accueil positif au pays et une reconnaissance par des organisations mondiales.
C'est une petite avancée qui pourrait sauver bien des vies. Des développeurs camerounais ont mis en ligne une application qui surveille les conducteurs. Baptisée Traveler, cette application permet de suivre et de noter la bonne ou mauvaise conduite d'un chauffeur.
And we're trying to provide information concerning buses all over the national territory in an office. So we're saying that you can sit in an office and have information concerning a bus. I mean, you can just walk around and you get a notification about a certain car, be it high speed or an accident automatically.
Pas besoin d'une connexion Internet pour utiliser l'application. La sécurité routière est un vrai problème au Cameroun. Chaque année, des milliers de personnes meurent dans des accidents. En cause, un manque d'infrastructures et de communication avec les secours. Selon l'OMS, les accidents de la route tuent plus que le paludisme au Cameroun. L'application Traveler a déjà été téléchargée 5000 fois et enregistre au moins 148 utilisateurs par jour.
So thank you. Maybe you can explain in English some of the videos, and we can. So.
Okay, the two video we just saw are explaining what is Traveler, the application I was mentioning in French later previously. The application Traveler is about road security. So first it was to prevent accidents by giving information to driver about what is on the road. If there's a driver who is conducting very quick, very fastly, and if there's another accident, any problem on the road. Now they have improved it, and it's even giving information to emergency services when there's an accident and notifying the families when, for example, the driver has an accident, they can notify it to his wife or his son or something like that. And when they start implementing the application, they have been facing internet shutdown in the southwest of Cameroon. So because of that internet shutdown for 2 months, they have improved the device, the technology to make it be usable out of internet. So that was about the videos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther, for that. And there's any questions for Esther? I see a question at the back. And okay, Saj as well. So maybe the gentleman at the back, you can introduce yourself.
My name is Rafael. I'm from private ICT business. I'm asking a question for the last presenter. Is it real-time updating, or how is it possible if the application is offline? How do you know the road is crowded, or how do you update the application?
Okay. I don't have the answer to this question because it's technical. I have a legal background, but I will check from them, and maybe before the end of the day, I will give you the explanation on how they proceed to make it function out of internet to collect the data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Je vais commencer par.
Let me begin. We're helping you to address a concern raised a while ago to know how the device can detect or work without internet. I think they use partially internet, but not in real time. So there's some kind of synchronization that is done. So the data is collected and then it is perhaps communicated later. And then let me ask my question. Well, it's not a question per se. I just want to give us some solution leads. After our meeting, we are not yet at the end of our meeting, of course. I think the global trend is not so much the technical issue. IoT in Africa, increasingly we have skills in Africa. We have a lot of people who have a mastery of technological instruments. We have the Ethiopian who has done something that is extraordinary, which I appreciate very much. Our friend from Guinea, from Gambia. I believe we have good things that are happening in Africa. However, for my part, we should better structure ourselves. We need to structure ourselves. What do I mean? We already need to define some charter. Let me take an example. The Tanzanian project, I would have loved that in his presentation. It should be oriented, well, they should have defined some specifications so that we are able to give feedback on the specifications that you have proposed, because it can serve as a model for future projects. Because the problem, now let us just look at, how do we call it, conception by person. taking into account security aspects already in the design of solutions or the tools that we are developing is important. To pay, looking at aspects of prevention and mobile, the aspects where it's no longer a project, the African document, the African Union document on cyber security and the Malabo Convention, that is how it is referred to, identify those important elements that can be incorporated into some specifications that will serve like a pillar or guidelines for the different projects that will be designed for the future. Because projects for the future will be, how do we manage people's private lives? How do we get the user's consent? How can we guarantee the user that the data that you are going to collect well, you are going to say that you will never sell such a data, but nothing proves that you will not sell the data. So tomorrow's challenges are going to be to set up some framework, some legal framework, key aspects of management that will permit us to be able to carry out all of these innovations that we are talking about. Thank you very much.
So I've been informed they're not yet ready for us downstairs, so we have about 10-15 minutes more. So if you have any questions for anyone on the panel, please prepare them. So we'll start with Wainaina, then the gentleman from ECOWAS, then gentleman at the corner, then you have a question? Then you. Okay, so Wainaina, you can start. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Wainaina Mungai from the Kenya chapter of ISOC. I'll pose this both as a question and also as maybe a potential proposal as we come out of here. Listening to all of us, I've had a couple of interventions in the presentations, and there is a lot that is already happening in the IoT space in Africa, from manufacturing to use of it in healthcare. And there are cases where we've used such implementations even in Kenya for monitoring water levels in, having smart meters. Now, this was done during the chapter-thon. We had a chapter-thon, which is a part of what ISOC uses to spur innovation within the chapters. And it focused on IoT. And we had smart meters that were developed in Kenya by one of our partners, and we call them Smart Maji. Maji is water, so it's smart water. And the cost, of course, is significantly lower than what is manufactured by dVentus, but it is quite hard to make it a mass market product. So some of the questions we had around it, what we learned from that chapter-thon is that already, yes, we have an innovation, it's brilliant, it's nice as a demonstration for those who love technology, but it's not yet relevant, especially to a price-sensitive market, as in the case of Kenya, that is. So we went forward and asked our questions. We had an IoT workshop in December of November, actually, of last year on the 23rd. And what happened at that workshop is we discovered a lot of initiatives. And one of the countries we learned from is a young man who's doing some work in Ghana, monitoring garbage collection using IoT so that it alerts the trucks that pick trash of the different kinds of contents of garbage and when they are collected and things like that. So he's trying to make it as relevant as possible. So I hope the team from Ghana is aware of what Joshua and the IoT Hub network are doing in Ghana. Then out of that workshop, what we learned is that there is a lot of what we are learning here also. There's a lot that is going on. Now, I want to connect that to what came out of that workshop is that some partnerships started to be generated. The ICT authority in Kenya wanted to partner with ISOC on matters of IoT. And one of the questions we started to ask ourselves, because many people came there from IBM, there's a company called Mkopa, and we had so many initiatives being shown. And we discovered that we have no visibility of what is happening even within Kenya alone in terms of IoT. And then we started an initiative where we wanted to take water meters. You know, we have a very big water problem in Nairobi. I know this might be applied to all your countries where the water gets rationed or never comes at all. So the kind of system that is there monitors when the water is available and pumps the water to a tank, switches off the pump when the water is full, so that there is no wastage of electricity, wear of the pump, and wastage of water if it overflows. So the advantages that are immediate to a small household. And when we put this across to some people, we discovered that my own neighbor sent me a video of his implementation of IoT that costed him $80 to monitor his water tank, control his pump, and it works. And we realized that maybe it is us. The gentleman from East Africa Commission mentioned internal awareness. We discovered that we may not be aware. So we are gradually learning that maybe we are not aware. And as the gentleman from the University of Addis had earlier mentioned in the morning, actually maybe it was also in a private conversation we had with him, I discovered that I may not be aware myself that whether or not there is research that has already been done that maps the initiatives. I have seen very many of the initiatives that have been done by ISOC chapters around Africa, around the world actually, around IoT implementations in different ways. These initiatives may not be mapped. So my question in a very roundabout way is, can we, if we have not already mapped initiatives within the IoT space in Africa, could we map them by country and by every other parameter that can make us learn from each other from a single, from a single source, even if it's ISOC or a single source where we can go and easily find a collection, like a collective that maps what is going on in each of our countries, how we can exchange this knowledge, what is happening in the Gambia. What we are discovering here, we can easily discover from a common portal. And I think it would be a brilliant way. That is, if it doesn't exist, I would suggest that could be one of the initiatives that comes out of this, what we've had here as a workshop. My second response, as I almost take all your 10 minutes, is a philosophical response to the question that was asked by Linda Ochiel, her second question about legacy organizations and the tech-focused organizations. This is a question that has baffled people in the humanities and in the technology space for decades. I remember between 2003 and 2005, we did a study. A book came out of it called A Developing Connection Between the Humanities in Sustainable Development and the Information Society. The same question going on, I think it's 14, going on 15 years now since all this was done, seems to be the same question. Developing hybrid people, or at least hybrid partnerships from our multi-stakeholder engagements, we need to find a way to make it grow from the knowledge that is already there. The question she has was answered 15 years ago, but how do we actually execute such questions, answers, and have better relations between those in the non-technical space and the people in the technical space? Because what we learned from our studies over time is that most projects that have failed around the world that are technology projects were run by people who are technology savvy. When they are run by non-tech savvy people, they may fail, but tendencies are that the studies show that the tendency is such that those who are hybrid have the highest success rate with technology-related projects. So it is very important that we continue to use that kind of approach, even in the case of IoT. Thank you.
Thank you, Wainaina. I think you've raised important points there, especially about sharing information of what's going on in the different countries on IoT. ECOWAS.
Merci, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is just a comment that I want to make following the proposal made by the colleague from the Congo chapter who was talking about charters in respect to the African Union. I believe, well, sadly, we have a lot of technicians here and not policy makers. We have to learn the decisions that we make. Because before we buy IoT devices and equipment, we should know exactly how we are going to secure such equipment. I was talking about ECOWAS a while ago, the ECOWAS regulation on data protection, the regulation on cybersecurity. The African Union in this building where we are has also adopted the Malabo Convention on cybersecurity and personal data protection. If I'm not, my mind is not failing me, that is since 2014, 2013, 2014. Yeah. And sadly, the African Union is not represented in this room, but that convention is not yet in force. We need just 15 countries, just 15 out of the 54, 55 countries for the convention to go into force. We don't respect what the decisions we have made, and we come and sit all the time to discuss. Because without security, we cannot develop IoT. If the customer does not have trust, they will not be able to use some of the technologies we are developing. For example, the example of the medical service that you give. I would not like to go and expose myself to a nurse who is taking my data and who posts them on a network that is not secure. We have a regulatory framework that is there, and we are not implementing them. And we go to buy equipment that are not secure because we are running the rat race of buying IoT equipment or producing IoT equipment, and we sell data of our citizens. If we at least have accepted to implement or to enforce what we have decided together, that is ratify the Malabo Convention, today we will have at least an instrument that member states can use to protect these terminals, these IoT terminals. Indeed, it is high time. We are saying that Africa can do it. Africa must do it. Africa just needs to know how to implement the decisions it makes. As long as we cannot implement our decisions, we are wasting our time. We are going to make beautiful speeches and statements, and then when we go back, there will be nothing. In fact, I want to draw the attention of all and sundry to the fact that when we make decisions, we should implement them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you've put it very well on the challenge and the work that we need to do. I think there was another hand. Yes, gentleman.
Okay. Say Eric Nzita.
I'm Eric Nzita from the Congo-Kinshasa Chapter. My problem is addressed to Cameroon, and I come back to the legal area. The road, even if it is public, there's some data that are between the public and the private and managed by the police. In developing that application, did the developers have any agreements with the police? That's question number one. And my second question, the police and the developer. Did they define areas of collaboration in the event of an accident so that they can be able to share the information they get with the police? My third question, the devices is like the black box of an aircraft. In the case of a crash or an accident, if the device is damaged, there is no information that is no longer available. Now, has the developer or are the developers capable of getting information from other appliances or from other drivers? And then my fourth and last question, a given device or object can receive information from other devices that are not made by the same company. They may not be from the same company. So how do you manage that information sharing between different devices from different makers? Thank you very much. I'll just take the questions in any order. I'll begin from the last question. Given that it's an application that is quite new in this transport sector, we don't have many other people involved in the same activity. So the probability of sharing information with other devices is very limited. And in addition, they have secured their system in a way, so you cannot access to their data just anyhow. And then the ultimate question was talking about the black box. In fact, the application plays the role of a black box. It collects data such that when there's an accident, they can be able to recuperate some information on the conditions of the accident and so on and so forth. So it plays the role of a black box. So that's one thing that they have added. Now, collaboration with the police. Yes, they cooperate with the police, but it is very informal because when they say that the application can make it possible to contact emergency services in general, the very first service is the gendarmerie. Because it is they that are most present on national roads. So it is the gendarmerie that is contacted first, and then hospital services. So there's some kind of cooperation, but there's no formal framework or a formal agreement with the police. It is because the police are not very interested in that. Because since the police is the police arm of the state, it is they that can protect the citizen. So they but they're helping the police in their work. So that's what I can say. I hope I've not forgotten any question.
I think the gentleman from South Africa is next. Any other questions after? Okay.
Thank you. I'd really like to protect my my innovators in the room. Guys, great work on your health products, Tanzania, Cameroon. I believe that if we are talking about innovation, we shouldn't be thinking about things that will block us from implementing those innovations. Because what I'm hearing now in the room is that, you know, I mean, Google didn't request no permission from nobody to collect data. I mean, Google Waze has got data where they can tell you that there's cops with a speed trap, you know, 2 miles away from your destination. That kind of data, where do they get that data from? They didn't ask nobody for permission. They didn't ask no government for permission. Not even ask us as a citizen for permission to get that data. But we sitting here now, and I feel that we are gatekeeping the black child from succeeding in innovation. Because if we're gonna be embracing outside technologies much more than our local products, then we're screwed. Sorry for my language. But Facebook, for example, right? Facebook is facing charges now in America because of their data leakage. We don't know what data leakage have been made for African users, and we are the most dominant users. But nobody's saying anything about that, right? Nobody's saying anything about regulation of Facebook, regulation of Twitter. You know, because social media as a whole has become a newspaper that's digital, but it's not controllable because you can't trace, you can't verify the data, right? But they didn't ask nobody for permission. So secondly, and then what I want to allude on mainly is that, you know, when it comes to the e-services, I mean, there are great products out there. In South Africa, there are 2 great guys that I know that are doing IoT devices in health since 2016. And the problem is that they're not getting adoption because of the people that are in government are sitting in the right seats, making the wrong decisions for the right people. And so I want to allude that much more, because I feel that, you know, if we're saying that, or the stats is telling us, the World Bank and Gartner is telling us that in 2020, there's going to be 50 billion devices connected to the internet. 2020, guys, is in the next 6 months. It's 2020. So here's the question: where are the devices going to come from? Did they ask anybody for regulations for those devices? No. So who's manufacturing those devices? Who's going to be supporting those devices? What languages those devices are going to be written on? Are we South Africans going to be still consuming and still becoming resellers of international products? You know, so I believe that we should innovation. That's why it's called innovation. It's disruptive, you know, and something that's disruptive, you cannot put boundaries before the disruption. I believe that let's disrupt and then put boundaries after, just like the Americans are doing it. Because if we're gonna now adopt a standard of, you know, we are the best policymakers, man. Africa's the best policymakers, but we suck in implementation. You know, we don't implement, we take time to implement. You know, I mean, my experience in my country is the same thing. I mean, the digital migration from analog to digital is still a big issue. For the past 9 years, it hasn't been done. And my government does not understand the loss of revenue over 2 billion of that market. And that could be new jobs that we're speaking about. That could be empowering youth, empowering women in that space, in the digital space. So I believe that we draft too many policies, but we don't think about how innovation disrupts. And if we're going to be speaking about trends, AI, I mean, already Watson is an IBM intelligence platform. Watson collects international data from everywhere. Watson currently now is able to detect cancer four times more accurate than a human being, than a nurse that went to school. Do you know what I mean? Or a doctor that went to school for 7 years. So what are we saying then? Because I'm standing here now, and I believe that we are lashing at our presenters with their innovation, and obviously there's a lot of thinking around that. And I believe that when it comes to the e-health products, when it comes to data, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do about data encryption, privilege account management, where you give privileges of the data, where you do data masking. So when you share data and you're migrating data, you do data masking. So we don't speak about data masking. We don't speak about data protection, or when you're migrating data from one system to another, whether we're sharing with a foreign system or not. We should be able to be sitting at a point where we mask the data and we want to show them what they have to see, because that is exactly what the international standards is doing. And these are things that exist. I mean, when you speak about DLP, I mean, DLP is data local protection. Those are the things that you do. And the previous speaker spoke about BYOD, bring your own device. BYOD was introduced in 2013, essentially driven by users coming with their cell phones to work, loading their emails on their cell phones, using the internet of the company to do things like Facebook, and go out of the internet mainly to do other things. So that's where guys that can hack can go through those phishings. They phish you with an email, they phish you with a link on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. Because you connected to the internet of your organization already, there's a leak. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the situation we had in South Africa with Post Office, where they got hacked in 3 days over New Year's, right? So on the first day of New Year's, they pulled out 16 million out of an account simply by calling the call center, and they asked the call center lady to give them her email address, and they will send her something, and she just has to open it. She has no idea who's calling and who's asking for what. So it could be a citizen asking for a service. I'm requesting to ask for a public email where I can send my information. They don't know how to regulate that. In 3 days, Post Office lost 32 million. In 3 days through the internet. No, there was no gunshots, no death, nothing like that. You know what I mean? So these are the things that exist, and this is 2013. But I still believe that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of when we are producing our own products. So I'm going to go back to the devices, the 50 billion devices that are going to be connected to the internet. And that's a fact. It's not an assumption. So I believe that let's not gatekeep ourselves, rather gatekeep the outsiders, into the environment. What we were discussing during the break was that imagine if we build solutions in our own languages that we can understand. Trust me, the Americans, the Chinese will never want to come in here and learn our languages so they can be able to support our products. Okay. Because what we are doing is that we do reselling and maintenance and support of Huawei, Cisco, HP, Dell, and what they do, the whole thing is written either in what's the word I'm looking for? It's written in Mandarin. So clearly, when I'm doing support, this rack is written in Mandarin. The code that's running on that rack is Melanin. So as a support engineer, I can't support the customer, but this is my client. So I must call Huawei, bring a Chinese guy to come down. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've touched on a lot of issues. Innovation. regulation? What is the bridge between the two? Okay, maybe just a quick response. In my country, we have a lot of incubation centers whereby, ideas like, the e-health that he talked about, you're put in with a mentor who can guide you and make sure that your product has, the security features and so on. I don't know if that's the case in all the countries, but, that's one approach. But you've raised a lot of, interesting topics that need to be addressed. We're going to address some of them in this forum today and tomorrow. And, there'll be a lot of sessions for all of us to exchange ideas. I think you have a lot to contribute. I think we have time for one last question before we go to lunch. I think the two of you raised this. Okay, two very quick interventions as we break for lunch because we're informed the lunch is ready. So you're between lunch, the two of you. Just
okay. Thank you so much. By the name's Ivan Bosa from ISOC, Uganda. I have heard about from the legal sector. I've heard about people talking about security of the devices and all that. I've attended some meetings, and when people talk about security of the system, I've not heard about people talking about blockchain, but I think blockchain can so much work when we get into that side. And I think that is something that we should think about. But then there is also the other part of the end users. Those are the people who are going to use these systems. I could give an example of Uganda. People in Uganda were, of recent, I think we all had that. We were faced with a social media tax. And this led to a drop down of Facebook users by around 50%, which is which was I think brought about as on the public part, because we had meetings with the public sector and the private sector to see how we can come amicably settle the tax, but we got to fail. Reason being, we get to have meetings like this, but then we invite the private sector, because I presume we do not have anyone from Uganda on the side of the public, on the side of the government. And those are the people that we would also need here, such that when we talk about these things, we could pinpoint to them and they get to know what is really happening down on the grassroots, because probably they don't know. That is why the South African guy there said that people are seated in the parliaments and are passing things, but they don't know what is really happening on the ground. I would want to know from the legal part what they think about protecting the people, the end users of the devices. Probably when you look at the prices of the devices, will they favor them? We shall have the devices, but will they use them?
Okay, thank you. Then we can take the last.
Okay, Malaku from Addis Ababa University again, and I have two short questions. The first one is it's about innovation, and Africa should not be consumer all the time. Yes, of course, we have to be able to innovate, but who should be empowering us to bring the technologies that we want to see? So as African, as a continent, I see African Union has the responsibility to promote innovation in Africa. For instance, I'm taking a typical example from European Union. European Union has a cost action. They have a lot of cost actions. Cost means European collaboration in science and technology. And they pump a lot of money for new innovations. A typical example is that there is a lab that is working toward this smart environment. For instance, there is a prediction that by the year 2050, 70% of Europeans will be above 65. There is aging problem. So what is the solution for this one? So they say they identified, clearly identified their problems and what should be done. And we know that finance is always an issue to come up with solutions. And they said, okay, we need to be able to create a smart environment. What does a smart environment mean? And we should be doing that. And then when should we achieve that? So there is a specific cost action dedicated for that. Similarly, the African Union should be responsible in creating such an environment so that Africans can create, the technologies that we want to see. And the other one is there a specific thing, African thing, So since we are highly connected, we are working in a global market. So the design could be done in America, but the actual physical product may be produced in China, or it could be, for instance, Apple. They don't have physical, most of the production is done in China, but they have the core values. And who is holding, that core value? We don't have to be insisting we should do the hardware and the software here, but we need to have the design. What do we want, first of all? And then if we have the design, we don't care Huawei or ZTE, the manufacturer could be anybody, anyone. If I have, for instance, in my local language, I want something in my local language, Amharic, then we can have the design, but we can give it to somewhere, wherever is cheaper. Sometimes creating the technology here is more expensive because, like producing a car, we have assembly. I'm sure we Ethiopians were assembling a car, but producing it is more expensive than importing it. So we need to think about that. So are we really creating the hardware and the software technology here? Or are we talking about holding the core values and the design and give it to somewhere? It's a global market. We cannot be an island at the end of the day. So we need to think about that. Thank you very much.
That's a good point. Thank you for that. For some of the comments or the questions you had regarding, protecting users and security, we're going to address them in the after lunch session. So after lunch, we'll have 2 more sessions. One focuses on security of IoT. The devices, what do we mean when we say IoT security or securing the IoT devices? And then we'll hear about a framework document that you could go back and read and implement that seeks to protect users. And then after that, the final session of the day, we'll hear from Senegal. They have started the work on a multi-stakeholder approach to creating a policy around IoT for Senegal. And I think you learn a lot from that session. So for now, I'd like to thank all of you for your time, and please welcome me in thanking the presenters for their work. I think those are very interesting presentations.